Hello and welcome once again to Crazy Comics and Stories. It's me, your charming and delightful old Uncle Rat Bastard. And at the other end of the series of tubes and wires that we call the Internet,
Oh, I'm sorry. Are we potting?
yes.
I'm sorry. I'm busy playing my my Simpsons Tapped Out because they just uploaded the new Halloween of Treehouse of Horror Halloween.
Well, do you think you could pause for a bit?
Well, hang on. I got to set everybody up for another 4-hour run. Oh, all right. I'll turn the volume down. God, everybody's a killer. Chris, and you have to play that at 3 in the morning? Well, I got to reset my characters. I'm telling you.
Joe, crazy writer.
Respect.
So we're We're about 2 weeks from Halloween.
You can tell because the weather we always talk about the weather here, but nobody ever does anything about it. We had a couple nice days. What was it? 70s? I don't even know if it hit 80. I wasn't really.
It hit 80 yesterday.
Did it? Oh, beautiful. And then it all went south.
No blizzard yet.
Nope. Well, yeah, today, overnight, let's see, we kept the house open all day Tuesday, and then at 10 o'clock at night, I shut it. Even though, well, what happened was by the time we woke up at 6, the temp was down to like 52. And my wife, who likes it cool, I was like, yeah, but that's too cool because then we'll have to turn the furnace on. At least this way, well, the house warmed up to like about 72, 73. Stayed that way for most of Wednesday. And today I was sitting downstairs and all of a sudden I heard the furnace kick on. My wife, of all people, turned the furnace on. So I made it to October 13th before I had to give up. And now, what's it now? 44 degrees out, 41 degrees outside. I don't think it. I did hear somebody say snow in the forecast. A couple of sprinkles around the Twin Cities tonight. Light batch of snow going north to south. And as far north as Brainerd, which is what, 50 miles north, maybe a little more. Inch or two of snow. We might get some flakes during the morning drive, but nothing on the road. And generally that first stuff tends to melt. So people are doing their yearly freak out. Oh my God, snow. It's like, really? You think we've had a winter in Minnesota where it hasn't snowed? Again, close. I don't know if you read farmers.
I hope we never, ever get another Halloween blizzard.
It'll happen eventually. But
the Halloween blizzard was the worst
91
blizzard I've ever been through.
It was crazy.
We got 2 feet of snow. But before it started snowing, it rained for about a half hour. So, and then the temperature just dropped. So all that rain just froze on sidewalks, on streets, on everything. Then you got 2 feet of snow on top of it. And it was so much that the plows couldn't get out for a day or two. But even if you went out and shoveled, you would then slip and fall.
Yeah. And the other thing is it melted really fast, which people forget because it didn't really break. I mean, it melted eventually, but it didn't melt enough to make everything just icy crap.
Yeah.
But I don't think you have to worry about it this year because Farmer's Almanac says that we're going to have a less precipitatory winter, i.e. less snow. However, it will be colder. So, and they're generally pretty much on the ball.
Now, I work on Halloween. So what
I don't.
So what
you
I
got
will
any
do
spare comics I could give out?
No, I'm not giving out comics.
No, me. I'm giving out comics.
Well, you do whatever you want. I always put out a nice bowl.
You got anything?
Not that I'm giving away, no.
Well, what do you do with that? Well, I suppose you keep all your crap. I was thinking I'll go through my free comic book based stuff and give it away. I did order some of the Halloween. What do they call their thing? Halloween.
Nanny?
No, there's a giveaway for comics around Halloween.
Yeah, I know.
But I didn't. I ordered some, but early freaking. I have no effing clue when my box day is showing up because it'll be there, but I still haven't gotten one yet for this month.
I always put out a nice bowl of broccoli and cauliflower with a little sign that says, please take only one.
And you wonder why you get all them fresh eggs on the side of your house.
I don't. But no one ever takes any of the cauliflower or broccoli. I love raw cauliflower.
He wants to come near the Strode compound. I didn't want to come there during the daytime.
That's true. The raccoons would attack them.
Yep. Hey, look at this. When you have Barney in his diaper outfit, the baby New Year, his 60-minute task is being attacked by raccoons. Look at that. They're pulling at his diaper trying to get it down. Come back, giant diaper. Hello, Ma. Oh, I did check with my good buddy Tim up at Granite City. He says the autographed Todd McFarlane or Greg Capello Batman Spawn you can have for a mere $1,200.
Oh,
each. I did not ask him.
Cheap at any price.
I did not ask him how much the two combined were. No, in all seriousness, if you are a flipper, this would be something you want to buy and slab. Because remember when they did the Spawn Universe, King Spawn, Gunslinger Spawn, and Todd had those exclusives come out that were autographed? Raw, they sold for about $800. Slabbed, they were going as high as $2,000. I think they might have mellowed out, but not a lot of people are going to go for this. So if you've got the money, and you may scoff, but remember one of the people that I highlighted a while back was a lady who goes around the country buying key comic books and flipping them. And she spends hundreds of thousands of dollars at it and does very well at it. So think of our friend Cory, Twin City Comics, goes around the country and the world having celebrities autograph comic books. And then he has CGC certify it, slab them, and you go to Twin Cities Comics on eBay, and he's selling the crap out of them. I love to go look just to see some of the autographs he has, because like I said when we interviewed him, I wish I'd have thought of that. Where were we going with this? Oh, no, I was just saying if you can afford it, talk to your friendly neighborhood comic store and see how much it'll cost to get one of those in, because I believe it's an incentive variant. So you probably pay the cost for 666 comics or 1,200 comics, I think, for the combined signed one. And of course, when they show up, I will be haunting the eBays just to see what they're going for.
So you talk about how you've been bringing your omnibuses to work.
I have, and I've decided I don't care if I rough them up.
So what one have you been reading lately?
I had two books that I read. And I thought the first one we could talk about. Remember, I made a big kerfuffle about Fantastic Four Full Circle by Alex Ross. I went out to get the sign or the slipcase edition.
Then you
and
sold
once
it.
I did, what did I do with it?
You sold it.
Damn straight. Matter of fact, I want to check Fantastic Four Full Circle slipcase and see what they're going for. Fantastic Gore. Well, I found it anyways. Well, there's a few of them being started at $70 for a bid, but they all seem to be. Let me try this. Lowest price. The lowest price one you can find is $130.
Oh.
If you just outright buy it. There's a couple going for less, 50, 60. It's retailed at $40. And the one I had, I brought to the charity booth and blew it out for $100. And I got a little worried about it because the guy came up and said, I'll take that. I mean, didn't even mention anything. I think he went around this con, and of course, what I did the same thing, and I saw somebody had theirs at like $130. So I said, $100. I'll take the 40 out. I paid for it, which again was part of the deal. That's why I donated it. And then I turned around and I bought a regular copy, which for a mere $24.99. Of course, now this was from AbramComicArts.com. Abrams books, for those of you not internet savvy. And how about that? I got a dent on it already. Well, like I said, I'm buying them to read. Cory, you got a copy? Did you read yours?
Yes, but first I want to talk a little about what Abrams did, because Peter Sanderson, who used to work at Marvel, if you read the official handbook of the Marvel Universe or Marvel Saga, he was kind of Marvel's official historian. Before that, he was at DC. He's the one who put together all of the information for Who's Who and did all the research for Crisis on Infinite Earths. And he worked in the office at Marvel until he retired, and he talked about it as how much he liked it and everything. And he said, and I've got some ideas for what Abrams could do. And the editor of Fantastic Four Full Circle said, I'd love to hear them. We're going to be doing more books. I would love to get your ideas. So I emailed him with my idea of, hey, why not have some of the creators of the past do kind of a last bow story like Lee and Kirby did for Silver Surfer. Have Tom DeFalco and Ron Frenz do one last Spider-Man story. Have Roger Stern do one last Avengers story, etc., 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 etc. He emailed me back and he said, that is a magnificent idea. Cool. I'm going to we're going to start talking to creators, and I'll start talking to the publisher, and I will keep you in the loop as to if any of those, if we're going to be doing any of those. So, Joe, I like Abrams Publishing, but I also, I like better the fact that they want to do these big special graphic novels because the Alex Ross one did so well, and they basically used it as kind of a pilot to see, will people buy these? Marvel kind of did the same thing with them, because Marvel has always kind of said that the original graphic novels just don't work financially for them. They've tried them a few times. Many of them have sold well, but the problem is they don't sell well enough to justify the cost to the company, which means they're still going to be publishing. For most of theirs, it's going to be, okay, we publish a miniseries so we can publish it as a book. So the Alex Ross Fantastic Four Full Circle, right?
Correct.
It was not a painted graphic novel. And I do not know how long it's been since we've seen Alex Ross doing pencil and ink work. Now, I talked about it when I reviewed it a while back. Joe, why don't you give me your impressions of the book?
I was underwhelmed.
Really?
Yeah, I think the biggest problem is every time I see Alex Ross, I'm thinking Kingdom Come, Marvels, something spectacular. And like you said, I think the first thing is I expected it painted, but I got over it because the artwork is beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. In this larger size, I mean, there were times where I was reading through it and I had to just stop and kind of look at the art again and then continue on in the story. And I rarely do that. Usually when I buy a book, I rip through it and then I go back and reread it. And I didn't. I just took my time reading this. And I also came across the phenomena I have with most fictional stories, be it movies, TV shows, or graphic novels. You're like, oh my gosh, how are they going to get out of this? Well, I've got like 12 pages left. They're going to get out of it. So again, it doesn't matter what I do. If I'm watching a movie, I'm reading a book, TV show, I blame Star Trek Next Generation because they were always so convoluted with all these A, B, C, D, E, F, G plots. And then you realize they got 10 minutes to figure this out. And that's why when they did the Borg episode, you're like, oh, they're going to continue it. And I told my buddy, no, they're not. Yeah, they're going to continue it. And when they said to be continued, oh my God, the floor dropped out. I was so surprised. So again, I have that problem every time I read a book. I had the same thing with, speaking of original graphic novels, the Ultron Quest, I think, the original Avenger one I talked about last week. So just one of those things, it's so great. The story very much evokes the Silver Age. There's references to modern age, so it's not like this is an out of continuity standalone book, which it really could have been, but I don't know if Abrams has the idea that this is going to be a perennial or if it's just, here's the event. I'm pretty sure they're going to do slipcase editions again because those sold like crazy. I mean, they sold out, and like I said, the secondary price is crazy on them. I don't even know what they have. If they have anything more other than the slipcase, I think they had a poster. I don't know if they have any extra content. I didn't think they would, otherwise I probably wouldn't have gotten rid of mine. So if you have a slipcase out there and you opened yours, let us know one way or another. That said, I don't like Negative Zone stories. The only one that I thought was any good was when Byrne sent the Fantastic Four into the Negative Zone to explore. Because to me, the Negative Zone is an entire separate universe. And all they do is, how does every freaking time they get into this universe, they run across, how do you say his name? Annihilus?
Yep.
Or Blastar. I'm like, there's no reason, unless he's camped out there waiting for the Fantastic Four, there's no reason why they should run into him every single time, especially if this is an entire universe. You don't believe me? Take a look at the last picture the Hubble took of our universe and then tell me just how many worlds you think are out there, realizing every one of those little dots is a universe or is an actual galaxy, I did like the Annihilation Wave. I thought that was, okay, you finally turned him into a villain that is not just, I'm going to destroy you. Okay, we knock it out. We're escaping the Negative Zone. I don't know. Folks, I'm going to talk about a spoiler in the book. So if you haven't read it, you might want to jump ahead. Because this was the saving grace for me. Do you remember the guy? What issue was? What was the issue?
Issue 51.
Thank you, because that was some gumshoe, and in my view, after reading it, he just kind of out of wherever took over the Thing, or became the Thing, or was the Thing. I haven't read it in years, and I had the original at one time. And his goal was to destroy Reed Richards. Did they ever explain why he wanted to destroy Reed Richards?
No, it was they had a rivalry in the past.
Okay, so we didn't even know who this was. It was just somebody out of the blue dressed as the Thing. So the big battle then was, Reed doesn't realize this isn't really the Thing. Well, they kind of refer to a little bit in the story as they're on the negative side of the universe, Negative Zone, and as they come closer, there's an antimatter wave that will destroy you. That's why you have to make preparations to go in and go out of the universe, which is why Annihilus and Blastar just don't come rumbling through the Negative Zone every time, because they'd end up destroying themselves. Well, as they're coming down on this asteroid, and Reed is totally apologetic to Ben, not realizing it's not Ben, that I've led you to our doom, old friend. He apologizes for everything, and this guy realizes, hey, this is not the Reed Richards I think it is. So he wails up with his strength, throws Reed Richards to safety, and then the last we see of him, he's on the asteroid heading to this antimatter field. He shows up at the very end of in the beginning and the end of this book. And that did two things for me. First of all, they actually visited the world that we see every time these guys have gone in and out of the Negative Zone. And as far as I know, nobody's ever gone down to that world. It's just always there, but they can't get to it because it's surrounded by this negative energy. And the fact that they made it to this world and then this guy was there, that was the saving grace for me for this book, because I thought, what a great way to pick up two concepts that have pretty much been ignored since Kirby and Lee invented the Negative Zone. And again, forgive me if I'm wrong, because again, there's been lots of Fantastic Four comics in Silver Age and Modern Age I haven't read, but I think this is the first time we've seen this.
Yes, this was a Alex Ross creation.
And I'm just looking at these colors. There's a it's got to be a black light poster when they're confronting a I'm not going to say anymore. You got to read this book. I mean, it's just amazing. There's sniping back and forth. Some of it I kind of went like, I think the Human Torch made some comment when Sue appeared, and he went, "Ooh, well, at least you're wearing a towel this time." I'm like, "Really? Ooh." And I may be quoting it wrong. I'm trying to find the scene where it happened. The Thing was kind of a bit of a sourpuss, more so than I always thought he was. I thought he's relatively content with being the Thing now, especially since he can turn back once a year. There's a real feeling of family, other than Ben sniping. You know, there's a great spot in here where Reed's contemplate, we have to figure out what's happening. Synergy's familiar, and Sue comes, listen, look, Reed, I know you. I've contacted Agatha to come over and hold down the fort. Thank you, but we must be certain that Reed, darling, they invaded our home where our children live. Let's not waste any more time in bringing the fight to them. And I was like, yeah, baby. And you turn on the next page and the look on Reed's face. So again, the story to me was kind of underwhelming, but the art, oh man, beautiful. And I'm just going to start repeating myself if I keep going on because I'm just paging through it and I don't even know where to start. Cory, you got anything to add on this? Because I know you've gotten a gel on this a while. I've just read this thing.
When I read it, and then I've read it a second time since, this was a love letter to Jack Kirby's Fantastic Four. He used the character of Janice, which was in the Lost Adventure. It was the story that Kirby turned in only the first half of when he left to go to DC. And Stan had not liked it. So what they did, they kind of cut it up a bit and then added some John Buscema art to make it where the Kirby stuff was a bit of a flashback, and then they went ahead with that story. He kind of went in and changed it back. And then he, as you said, he uses that character from the best Fantastic Four story ever, Fantastic Four number 51, where we thought he had sacrificed himself, but we find out, no, he survived and changed who he was, and it affected this world we've had no knowledge of. And it really felt like that. It also went back to the Fantastic Four dynamic under Kirby, where they were a family, but they fought. And Ben has now mellowed out to the point where he's not even the Thing from the 70s anymore. Even in the 70s, he would grouse and complain about the fact that he's trapped being the Thing. Brings all that in, and it just, as I read it, it makes me remember that Alex Ross put in a pitch to bring back the Fantastic Four, but they went with Dan Slott instead because Dan Slott's kind of their number one writer. And he has made them so much money that if he says, I'd really like to do this, they're going to go, okay. And Ross as a writer, Ross said he would be able to write, but he wouldn't be able to draw it every month. And they're like, your writing has kind of been iffy. But in this one, because he was writing and drawing it, because he had extra time, because it's being done by Abrams and not Marvel, he was able to decide on an art style, which was Kirby influenced through his own personal style, which is highly realistic. And he likes the negative zone, so he used the color to make everything in the negative zone feel weird. Whereas in the regular comic, the negative zone's just, they're floating out in space. He used color to make those pages feel a bit off, feel different. Like, yes, it's a different universe, and you're going to feel it in the way the book is colored rather than through exposition, which is something I really liked.
Oh, yeah, and it's an oversized book about the size of, it's a little bigger than a regular hardcover. Hang on, I got my handy dandy. Let's see, it's 11 by 9.
Yeah.
So you get a great, even like I said, the aforementioned page that I flipped to, there is so much detail on the page that you're just going to, once you've read it, go back and just drink in the art, because it's just gorgeous. And the way he draws the thing.
And it's both written and drawn in a way.
There, I just flipped to the page. It's called The Anti-Earth.
And it's written and drawn in a way that rewards multiple readings. Most comics, even good comics, it's all on the surface. You take 20 minutes to read a regular monthly comic, and you've got everything. This, a few pages longer than a regular comic, more heft to the size of the art, but also because Ross does so many subtle things and bring back so many touch points that it's one of those where you read it and then you let it settle. And when you go back and read it again, you get more out of the little side things. So I really enjoyed it. Is it my favorite Fantastic Four story in the last 10 years? No, that's Secret Wars. But it is a damn good story, and the art is why it needed to be in that format.
And since this is almost as close as a review as we've had in a while, we always say, buy, borrow, ignore.
Oh, this is a definite buy.
And I liked it so much, I bought it twice. And as far as availability, again, you want the slipcase, you could probably find, I'm just looking on Amazon, somebody's got it for $66. Kindle, $10. Forget Kindle. This is one you want to buy in a hardcover, and you can get it as low as $20 off the Amazons. I recommend, like I did, go to your friendly neighborhood comic book store and help them out. And I have no idea if it's going to stay in print.
Yes, it is planned to be.
Oh, sweet.
It is
so there's
planned
another
to
reason.
Stay in print, because
as soon as they do
publisher.
A second print, your first prints go up in value.
Yeah.
By the way, the story we talked about, the remake of issue, what was it? 51?
Yeah.
No, that wasn't The Lost Adventure, was it?
No, The Lost Adventure was 106 or 107.
No,
well, that's the original, but they did put out a book of Fantastic Four: The Lost Adventure where they just did Kirby's version of that story, not the cut-up version with the John Buscema art.
Yeah. So, anyways, it rung a bell, and I was just looking it up. It's around. You can find it. Don't pay a premium for it.
So, Joe, what's the other book you've been reading?
Well, I cracked open my New Mutants Omnibus, and you can almost hear me going as I lift this thing. This is the original, and I'm gonna smack nostalgia on a lot of this because this was during what I consider my golden age comics. The Omnibus has Marvel Team Up number 100. Which is the Fantastic, yep, and the versus the Fantastic Four, which was one of the first times where you just see how damn good Spider-Man is up against foes. The second time, ironically, was in the original Secret Wars, where he not only outdid the Fantastic Four, he outdid the X-Men. It goes into Uncanny X-Men. Again, I didn't bring my cheaters. Cory, you're supposed to tell me for me to bring 160, and then reprints the graphic novel, because that is the New Mutants' first appearance. And again, it was Marvel graphic novel. We've talked about this series before. It was fired off by the death of Captain Marvel. Number 2 was Elric, the Dreaming City. Number 3 was the origin of Dreadstar. And then number 4 was the New Mutants. where you can find it for about $150 if you want the original, or you could. They had up to 4 printings. So, and again, this was the first appearance of the original New Mutants, Sunspot, Mirage. Actually, Mirage 2, I guess. There was probably a previous Mirage.
Mirage was a villain in Spider-Man.
Yeah. Cannonball. Well, not Karma, as we said before. That was back in 2 and 1. Wolfsbane. I think I got them. There were, just 4 to begin with, right? Oh, and Sunspot, Roberto.
Yeah.
And Chris Claremont wrote it. Bob McLeod did the art. It was followed up by New Mutants #1, which surprisingly isn't that expensive. So you can almost get the entire run of New Mutants. Eventually, well, let's talk a little bit about the story, I guess, because now it gets kind of weird, like what happened, why happened.
Well, before we go into the story, let's talk about how the series came about.
And then I'll give you my reaction as a fan, because I remember it very clearly.
John Byrne, when he left the X-Men, one of the things that he had been going to Jim Shooter about that he wanted to change is the X-Men's no longer a school. We want the X-Men to be a school. And Claremont felt that they had already gone beyond that. But it put that idea in Shooter's head. And Shooter was very much a person who wanted things to go back to basics. That's why he and Byrne got along very well at the time. It was, I want everything to go back to the way it was back in the 60s. And Byrne is still trying to do that. So Byrne was agitating for a new X-Men book so that he didn't have to work with Chris Claremont anymore. And eventually they just gave him the Fantastic Four so he'd shut up. But it put that idea in Shooter's head of, all right, the X-Men needs to be a school. And he would impress upon Claremont, hey, get this back to being a school, get this back to being a school. And Claremont, if you read the issues around that time, that was one of the reasons why he highlighted Kitty Pryde more. But you could tell by the stories he did that he was still fighting against it. So what Shooter said was, all right, we're going to do a second X-Men book. X-Men
I'm going to toss in a quote from X-Men editor Louise Simonson.
Yeah.
She recalls this quote. Neither Chris Claremont or I really wanted to do it.
Yeah.
We wanted the X-Men to be special and by itself. But Shooter told us that if we didn't come up with a New Mutant book, someone else would.
Right. That's what I was about to say. Shooter basically laid down the ultimatum that if you don't do it, someone else, I will assign someone else to do it, because the X-Men had become their best-selling book in the direct market. It took a few more years for them to be the #1 selling comic overall. So they started to put together a team, and I think in the beginning they wanted to use Karma from that Marvel team-up story. There was a young mutant in a Marv Wolfman Fantastic Four story around 202, 203, and they were going to use that character, but Claremont never quite figured out how to fit him in. They created a bunch of characters and put together the pitch of, okay, the X-Men are going to remain what they are, but we will also have the school. And the New Mutants will be the students at the school. So as they're putting the story together, the X-Men were out in space fighting the Brood. So story-wise,
back on Earth, Charles Xavier was devastated because it wasn't that, oh, they're off fighting the Brood. Everybody thought the X-Men were dead.
Yeah.
And if you read New Mutants, the graphic novel, like I did because it's in the Omnibus, you see how Xavier kind of turns gears over to, yeah, I guess I will open a school because there are mutants that need to be trained. And as you start reading the early issues, he gets really angry when the New Mutants ask, are we going to be the new X-Men? No, there will be no more X-Men. And to the point where everybody's like, what the F did I just say?
Yeah.
There's also conflict within the New Mutants because not everybody gets along with everybody. I'm trying to find...
that was also a part of the early X-Men, too.
Yeah,
remember,
Mirage.
Everybody hated Wolverine.
Mirage was kind of stuck on the I'm only here because my grandfather who got killed in the New Mutants graphic novel made me go see this white man who says he can help me with his powers. Mirage accidentally fires off her powers, which originally made you see what you feared the most. So all of a sudden, I can't remember who it fired on accidentally. Was it Wolfsbane?
Yes.
And, she is a 13-year-old religious girl from Scotland who is having a tough time. She thinks her powers are a curse. So it takes her a while.
She'd been told by her pastor, who was basically her father, that she was possessed of evil.
Yeah. And that's how Xavier found her, because they were kind of hunting her down. And the one thing that I remember, actually, let me rephrase that. I don't remember a lot of these stories. I read them because I want to reiterate just what a big deal it was that there was going to be a second X-Men spinoff. Because again, from Giant Size X-Men 1 all the way up to 160, it was one X-Men book. It's not like there is now where you've got dozens upon dozens. And again, the X-Men were kind of their own little universe. They intersected occasionally, and there's even a mention in the New Mutants where the graphic novel where Reed Richards from Fantastic Four calls Xavier and tells, hey, you need to check this out. And or was that it? No, I'm sorry, that was in Marvel 2-in-1.
No, Team Up.
Team Up, thank you. Yeah, I'm browsing through it here because, and it's funny because as Reed's trying to talk that, hey, we picked up this mutant. Actually, Spider-Man was the first one to run into her. He's busy schooling the X-Men in the Danger Room. So he's half talking to Reed, half talking. So again, the the X-Men are up in outer space. Nobody knows they're alive. The New Mutants are new. Now that lasted until X-Men 167. Because what the X-Men discovered, there is a brood down on the planet still. And they're like, there's only one person it can be, Charles Xavier. Which goes back to explain why in New Mutants 1, 2, 3, and the graphic novel, he was very apprehensive about forming another school of mutants and why he wanted nothing to do with the X-Men. And he was almost, there are parts that happen that make you think, hey, he's not necessarily working for the New Mutants. He might be actively trying to get them killed. Well, when the X-Men show up in 167, and again, what's beautiful in the Omnibus is it's all there in right order. I mean, the X-Men come bursting into the house. There's a brief fight between the New Mutants and the X-Men, and the X-Men kind of, they don't know who they're fighting against, so it does allow like Sunspot to get Colossus clocked into another field. And of course, they don't know who they're fighting against because when they get attacked, it's not a real contest. Needless to say, and I don't think we're spoiling a comic from, was it 1981, 82? They are able to defeat the Brood inside Xavier. They clone Xavier. He can walk. No, he can't because it's a different storyline. I went through it all in the Marvel Uncanny X-Men Omnibus, or was it just X-Men Omnibus 3? So you can read that. The story continues on their own. As I'm reading these stories, eventually they get up and they introduce themselves to Magma. I don't remember any of these stories, to tell you the truth. I really don't remember the New Mutants until Sienkiewicz came on.
And Magma was a weird.
Yeah.
It was this it was Nova Roma, which were a bunch of people from Rome had gone across the ocean and set up a new Rome in Brazil.
And it's in the mountains, and it's hidden, and it's hard to get to.
And it's run by a mutant vampire.
And that's the first appearance of what's her name?
Selene.
She'll stick around for a while. So again, no real up in price yet, but Magma's first appearance is number 10. Selene's number 9. First appearance of Arama. Her name was Amira before she became Magna, was in issue 8. So Sal Buscema art, Chris Claremont's writing it. And there's a couple other books tossed in here. They do toss in Marvel Team Up Annual. I can't read it again. It's number 6, which includes Cloak and Dagger, New Mutants. They end up fighting against the Viper, against Silver Samurai. What I do like in here is there is some light continuity going on, because they do actually talk in, I believe, when they get to Karma disappearing, because they actually think she's dead. That they want to the New Mutants want to try to help, but they're just going to get in the way. Xavier brings in the X-Men to do the hard part. Wolverine's not there. Cory, tell him where Wolverine was.
He was in Japan having his own miniseries.
Yep, which is in the X-Men Omnibus, by the way. That's the brilliant Chris Claremont, Frank Miller drawn. Both volumes include magic, because eventually, I can never say her name right. Ileana as Magic appear. And of course, the Magic miniseries is one I remember getting and eyeballs crossing. I didn't like it at all. But eventually she joins the X-Men. I'm sorry, New Mutants. Let's see, Magma, Magic. It continues on until I can't read the issue. Screw it. Oh, number 18, which is where some hip cat named Bill Sienkiewicz comes in. It's the first appearance of Warlock, not the guy who goes footsie with Thanos, but the cybernetic alien. If you remember, where was Warlock at this time?
Dead.
Yep. So they were just reusing a name that nobody ever heard of. I will point out, at this time, we talked a thing about Mark Jeweller's insert editions. They start showing up around this time. So when you're looking at your back issues, number 18, $3.50. Not expensive at all. If you are lucky enough and you find that Mark Jeweler insert, and you can tell because it's got the cardboard that makes it a little stiffer, $50. So, and there's another one in issue 20, 22, 23, 24. It goes on through issue 27, and then they disappear. So if you do find one of those for $3, you got yourself something special there. The story at this time sticks with me more because I absolutely loved what Bill and Chris were doing at this time. They introduced Magnus, they introduced Warlock, they brought in Doug Ramsey, Cypher. The art was crazy. The stories were amazing. That issue, Slumber Party, which I believe is issue 25. No, I don't think I got it right. No, I am right. 24 is just a brilliant standalone in one issue. I just love to read it. It's just humorous. It's amazing. About this time, an annual came out. Cannonball was in another Marvel team up, I believe issue 149. There were some crossovers with the X-Men. And before we get to Secret Wars 2, is there anything in Sienkiewicz's run, Cory, that you remember fondly?
Well, the first thing I want to talk about is how the book started. It had that huge kind of first issue as the Marvel graphic novel. And there were a lot of us at the time that were like, yo, it really sucks. We got to pay $5 for the first issue of this comic.
But if you still had
basically a double-sized comic, and the next issue's the first issue for 60 cents.
Yeah, and again, it's not a spectacular story. It certainly is not up there with number 1, Death of Captain Marvel, nor is it up there with issue number 5, which was X-Men
God Loves
and Kills.
That was number 6. That was number 6.
Graphic novel. That's fine, but those were graphic novels.
Number 5
you read.
Killraven.
Forget it. Those two I mentioned, those were worthy of graphic novel. Not the short Elric or Killraven.
Killraven, believe it or not, was the best-selling Marvel graphic novel of first 10 issues. It outsold the X-Men.
Nobody's talking about it now except us in passing. Although maybe we'll visit Killraven character
because
later.
It's goddamn brilliant.
So there you go. Let's see what it's worth. Anyways, continue.
And then the New Mutants book, I remember the characters and their interactions, but the stories just seemed to be pretty blah. And I don't know if it was because Chris was putting all of his attention on X-Men, or it was a book that was kind of forced for them to do, or if he just wanted to play in his own universe rather than bringing it into the Marvel universe.
Folks, I want you to go back and I want you to grab what you just talked about, what Cory talked about, the graphic novels, because he was wrong.
What do you mean?
New Mutants was 4, X-Men was 5, Star Slammers was 6, Killraven was number 7.
Really?
Yeah. I'm just going off Atomic Avenue.
That very well could be. That is weird, because I remember Killraven came out and everybody underordered it. But Marvel knew that it was going to sell overseas, so they actually had to pull all the overseas copies to ship to shops. But wow, I thought it was number 5.
Well, okay, here's your chance to redeem yourself, Cory. And this is, does the Strode know? What was the only issue that was a fill-in?
On the New Mutants?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. I honestly don't know, because I don't remember the individual stories. Mm-hmm. I remember Nova Roma.
Oh, my gosh.
And the rest was just kind of a blur of nothing.
Now, it was issue number 92, written by Dwight Zimmerman.
Oh! I thought you were talking in the early run.
No, I'm sorry. I was talking the only issue altogether. So, yeah, because Chris Claremont wrote a lot of it. Louise Simonson took over with Rob Liefeld plotting the final issues that we'll get to eventually.
Yeah, and when Claremont left, I think the book took an uptick, because it took a huge uptick under Sienkiewicz, whose style had started evolving on Moon Knight. Then when Moon Knight was canceled, he came over to New Mutants. And at the time, I remember a lot of people hated his art. I mean, viscerally hated it. But the good thing was that there were enough people who said, oh, let's give this a try. Sales didn't go up or down. They just kind of stayed the same. But a lot of my friends at the time who were reading comics were like, oh, I can't read that. Doesn't make any sense. The art's too weird.
I'm just looking, because Bill hung with it through issue 31.
Which, if you think about it, that's only about a year.
Now, I made the, before I get into the Secret Wars part of the program, which will be brief, or we could just let Cory say, what happened to the New Mutants during Secret Wars?
Well, first I wanted to ask you, what was your reaction when Bill Sienkiewicz came on?
Oh, I was floored. I was following him on Moon Knight. So when he went to New Mutants, just like I did with John Byrne, X-Men, the Fantastic Four, I just followed him over, and I was like, this is so awesome. And he had just the way he drew Warlock, Magnus. He drew the spirit bear that killed Sorry, my brain just shut off.
Mirage's.
Or Daniel Moonstar's parents, yeah. And again, if it didn't solidify when he did the slumber party, absolutely loved it. They actually include Uncanny X-Men 180 in this one because I think that deals a lot with Magnus. I think that's when he actually arrives on Earth. And what was the deal? He was it a technovirus? Was that where we first started? Yeah, that was his big thing, and that becomes like crossovers years later. But this is where it all gets introduced.
And I don't think any other artist could have given us the version of Warlock that we got. Now, after Sienkiewicz left, other people drew the character and drew it well. But he was the one who created how asymmetrical and strange it looked, because it was a technological life form. And you got to remember, this was before we had cell phones and home computers and all this. So it was very much kind of a weird idea. And the idea of a technology virus, this was before there were computer viruses, Joe. There were computer viruses till years later. But Claremont had this idea of technology that could be a virus and infect people, which he used repeatedly until it became, till, like with all of Claremont's ideas, till he bashed that thing into the ground.
Issue number 25 has a cameo by Legion.
Yep.
If you remember him. He is full of first appearances is in 26. They fight him in 27. 29 has the first appearance of Guido Carosella, or as we call him, Strong Guy. And now we're up to what Cory keeps avoiding, but I'm going to bust right into it. What happened to the New Mutants in Secret Wars?
Now, is this Secret Wars or Secret Wars 2?
2, because they weren't around for the Secret Wars.
Yeah. Well, they were. They just they weren't involved in it at all.
Nope.
I thought the book was coming out as Secret Wars was coming out.
Well, remember, Secret Wars 2, or are you talking Secret Wars?
I'm talking the original Secret Wars.
If it wasn't. I don't think so, because I don't remember it even referred to in the X-Men.
Well, Secret Wars was 84, and New Mutants started in 83.
Yeah, and Secret Wars is 85, so yeah, they probably didn't refer to it at all.
Yeah. So then Secret Wars 2.
You don't remember, do you?
No, I remember, because it had that beautiful Art Adams cover of the New Mutants quietly walking to their graves.
Why?
Because the Beyonder killed them.
Which you haven't read. I haven't gotten Cory my copy of Secret Wars Omnibus. But this is probably one of the weird things about it. As I read it all the way Shooter intended it to be, cross it all over. And really, you should put tiny little numbers on it so you know what order to read them in. It really came out of the blue. Because all of a sudden, the Beyonder was an asshole, and he just outright kills the New Mutants. I mean, they attack him, and he kills them. They get better, because they do include Secret Wars 2, number 9, I think 8 or 9. The one where he has them come back and fight everybody. In other words, New Mutants versus the whole Marvel Universe at the time. This brings in another interesting idea. First of all, I should mention issue 32 has Madripoor in it. The first appearance of Madripoor, much to Logan's fun in. So again, let's see. The New Mutants, they run into the Beyonder issue 60. By the way, there is a Mark Jeweler insert for that. Don't pay a lot. It's not worth much. And then by 36, 37, they have the other tie-in where the Beyonder just kills them and brings them back. So they're alive. But by the time issue 38 hits, they are having, what would we call it today? PSD?
Yeah. Post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah. They are not in the best of means. Now, during this time, I forget, Magneto becomes the leader of the New Mutants. Is this when Xavier took off in outer space finally?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's again happening in Uncanny X-Men, so you don't have, again, get issue volume 4, whatever it is. Magneto doesn't know what to do, so he gives them over to the White Witch as part of the Hellions. Excuse me, I gotta pick up Omnibus number 2. Oh my gosh. I gotta figure out where I am here. Let's see.
Well, let's not get too deep into it because we're at an hour.
No, not really. I'm just looking because there's New Mutants Special Edition, Giant Size X-Men number, annual number 10. There's a crossover with Power Pack, Secret Wars, Web of Spider-Man Annual, continue. And then they bring in the Fallen Angel miniseries, a Firestar miniseries. And let's see, this goes all the way up to New Mutants 54. So, but again, they deal with that. And it just continues on. Don't worry, Xavier comes back. I don't want to leave you high and dry. But Chris Claremont's been writing it the whole time. I don't even see where Karma comes back.
She didn't. I remember they kind of sent her off. She was going to be taking care of her younger brother and sister, and then she was just gone.
She was dead.
She didn't.
They thought she was dead for a while.
Yeah, but she didn't come back till the Wolverine series.
Oh, is that where she came back?
Yeah, which is weird that they just wrote her out of the book. I think it was because her power was to possess people. And while it's a cool power, it's hard to use in a fight and a superhero conflict.
That was why they killed off Cypher too. Because he was boring, he wasn't exciting, he would hide behind a tree all the time.
Well, and he had been brought into the book because they wanted to show mutants that didn't have powers that could be used in combat.
Yeah.
And then they killed him off. And I remember him being killed off, and I went, oh, wait, this has got to be a trick. They wouldn't kill off this character because he's too interesting. And they did kind of bring him back in a really weird, messed up way.
Yeah.
But
yeah, just Warlock come down, discovered he's dead, reanimated him with the technovirus to the chagrin of everybody else, although poor Warlock was like, hey, isn't this cool? I'm trying to figure out, let's see, they folded the Exterminators into the New Mutants, was a group of young wards from the X Factor comic. That included Boom Boom, Tabitha Smith, Fire Fist, who Boom Boom appeared in Secret Wars first. Fire Fist, pyrotechnic wanted by the U.S. government. Richter, a young Mexican who created shockwaves. And Skids, a former Morlock who could project frictionless force fields around her body. I don't remember any of this.
I remember Exterminators. That was during the Mutant Massacre.
I don't have it. I know I remember getting it and just even Fallen Angels wrote Daniel Moonstar out of the series. She became a Norse pantheon as one of the Valkyrie.
Yeah, they did that in that 2-part Art Adams story that I loved. It was a New Mutant special, and was it an X-Men special?
I think it was both, yeah. Wasn't that where they brought, who was it that was like so grotesquely fat and out of shape, and as part of the fates, they tossed her in a desert, and by the time she finished crawling across it, she was back down to her thin fighting self. Was that Karma?
I don't remember.
Maybe that was in a different book, because it's all blurring, because again, there's different series. Again, they're all tied together because there weren't a plethora of mutant books out there. I mean, to get a Fallen Angel miniseries or Exterminators was actually a pretty big deal.
Yeah, once we got to the end of the 80s, that's when the number of X-Men books just exploded. And that's kind of when I started losing. To me, that's when the X-Men lost their shine in a lot of ways, because it was Chris Claremont running the show. And even though he would drop ideas off and have plot lines that wouldn't go, you still had this feeling of it being under control. But then by the time you get to the end of the 80s, you've got 4 or 5 books, you've got endless miniseries, and you've got so many characters who... The origin of Cable is always the one I always use to explain how the X-Men lost control. He's the son of Cyclops and Jean Grey's clone, who was sent to the future.
Not when he showed up. This is see, when he showed up, the original deal was, okay, so in number 86, some young cat named Rob Liefeld showed up. 87, of course, is the key issue, first appearance of Cable. When they brought him in, and I don't know if I remember reading this in Wizard or Amazing Heroes or whatever the magazine was, because this was 1990, before I even owned the comic store. And they brought this guy in and they said, okay, this is a guy who's been around in the Marvel Universe. He's interacted with everybody that we know of.
You just haven't seen him yet.
And then, again, the New Mutants lasted till issue 100, and it was canceled. And did you read when Cable showed up?
I did.
And I enjoyed it.
Now, here's the thing. I read New Mutants all the way to issue 100.
Mm-hmm.
I think Claremont, after Sienkiewicz left, kind of lost his way. When Louise Simonson came in, she kind of grabbed a hold of it and remolded it and made it good. But after she'd been on it for a while, the book kind of seemed directionless. Then Rob Liefeld came in, and we can mock Rob Liefeld's art from morning to night. The internet is full of it. But he brought an excitement to that comic.
Oh, absolutely.
And, throwing in tons and tons of characters. Rob, to me, is like if you took a 14-year-old who was a huge Marvel fan and put him in charge.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I have all these characters that I've created in my head. I'm going to bring them in. He didn't have a lot of formal art training. He had learned to draw by looking at his favorite artists, Art Adams, Tom McFarlane, people like that. And I think the reason he became so popular is he drew the way teenagers drew. So he drew what people who read comics wanted to draw like.
And it was exciting. I mean, Gruber and I were well in our P&J comics. No idea, 2 years later, we'd own a comic store. People were excited about this. They wanted these comics. And they were selling pretty good, enough to, some of them had second prints. What Marvel would do for second prints is they'd put gold on the background cover.
Gold!
And again, it grew in popularity. I don't know, Cory, if you know what the sales were.
I know that by the end, it was selling around 500,000 copies. That was when comics were exploding.
And again, issue 98, first Deadpool, and Domino and Gideon and whatever, and not the Deadpool we think. He would come later. So by issue 100, they canceled it, and then they decided to replace it with a book called, a tiny little book you may or may not have heard of, 1991, X-Force. And Cory, how many copies of X-Force? How many different variants were there of X-Force? And what?
5.
Yep.
There were 5. They were polybagged with a card.
Yes, and that's all that was changed. And they sold like crazy. I don't know how many. I'll have to ask Gruber. I'm going to have lunch with him next week. How many of these bloody things we bought? Because we were buying them, I believe, probably from Dan and Brian when we started going to Hot Comics. And it exploded. It was quite popular. Do you have how many books this sold?
I believe, I'm actually going to look it up because I believe it was like 1.2 million and it was crazy. But X-Force #1 sales. There it just says millions of copies.
Millions. So you're talking this was
5 million copies.
This was August 91, and it superseded the McFarlane Spider-Man, which came out in August 1990, only to be superseded by what?
That was X-Men #1.
Yes, when Jim Lee took over. Again, that had real variant covers with a wraparound cover. And again, we're not going to get into X-Force. The only thing I'm going to say is X-Force, all these comics, when Pat and I were doing Weekend Warrior sales, were going like crazy. Spider-Man, X-Force, X-Men. Even when you get up to, I'm trying to find the issue, there was a crossover between McFarlane's Spider-Man going with X-Force, which to this day, I absolutely love to find copies of. They're not expensive.
X-Force #1?
Nope.
Guess what, Joe?
What's that?
One of them is worth a lot of money. One of the 5. Which one?
Period B with Deadpool card.
Correct. That one is selling for $40 to $50.
Wow. I'm still trying to figure out where the heck the crossover with Spider-Man was. But that don't matter.
I believe that was
13.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
I know it was the Spider-Man comic #6.
And I believe didn't it have a piece of edited art?
Yes.
Because originally it was going to Shatterstar was going to shove his sword into Juggernaut's eye socket and
yeah.
And even what did they made it so it wasn't into the eye socket, but by the time you got the scream, you knew what he did.
They made it so you couldn't see where the sword had gone.
But you knew where it was heading.
Yeah.
And that would, to me, that was much more effective than had they actually shown it. So, and again, this was the beginning of the 90s. This is what fueled everybody. They were going crazy. Maybe gives you a little insight when these guys all decided to leave and go form their own company. It doesn't matter. It would never last.
You know what is going to last, Joe?
I hope New Mutants enough to get my Omnibus 3 because I don't have them all yet.
No, it's these guys, our sponsors.
Sweet.
Our newest sponsor is NordVPN. Let's be honest, if you're out on the internet, you need a VPN to protect you. There's all sorts of things going on the internet where people can track you. You could accidentally download a keylogger, all sorts of things. NordVPN gives the best security possible. It has a password manager which generates complex passwords, syncs across all your devices, stores your notes and credit card information. It also gives you 10 gigabytes of private cloud storage, secure files that backs up your data automatically. But the main thing it gives you is peace of mind. It gives you peace of mind when you're out on the internet, when you're streaming, when you're playing games, when you're listening to podcasts like this one. It gives you safety anywhere at any time. It protects your online activity. You get full access to all content. And if you use the link go.nordvpn.net sh3ku, it'll take you to where you can get a great deal for a 1-month plan, a 2-year plan, a 1-year plan. They are our newest sponsor. We're happy to have them. And if you would like to sponsor something here at any of the podcasts on the Solitaire Rose Network, you can. Just email me, solitairerosenetwork@gmail.com. Thanks. And I do a bunch of other podcasts like these. The Solitaire Rose Podcast Network is filled with all kinds of audio goodness. First, there's Crazy Comics and Stories. It's been going since 2010. It drops every Monday, and it has me, your charming and delightful old Uncle Rat Bastard, and Joe Crazy Writer talking comics, shenanigans, and whatever we're freaking and geeking about. Every Monday morning. It's been going since 2010, and it's available at crazycomics.solitairerose.com. Also on that same feed is the Solitaire Rose Podcast, which is me, again, your charming and delightful old Uncle Rat Bastard, doing interviews, talking about comics history, pretty much talking about whatever I want to talk about. We've also got Solo Joe, where Joe Crazy Rider does a solo podcast, and he hasn't done one in a while, so kick him in the shins to get him started. We also, on that same feed, have Solitaire Rose Series and Review, where we do DVD commentary of older comic book series. That's all at crazycomics.solitairerose.com. I also do a podcast with Wolfie B. Bad at badadvice.solitairerose.com, where we take listener questions and give them bad advice. There's also Novelcast, where I take the novels I've written and turn them into free audiobooks. That's at novels.solitairerose.com. There's also Fantastic Forecast, where myself and Adam Vermillion are going through the entire run of the Fantastic Four, 4 issues at a time. That's fantasticforecast.solitairerose.com. There are always more podcasts at the Solitaire Rose Podcast Network. Be there. Aloha.
You wonder why Cory's so tired all the time.
And my favorite new segment of the show is time for, Joe.
Yay!
Retro reviews.
All right. My first one, well, actually, we only do one. Otherwise, we'd be here all day. I picked a comic I've talked about. I don't think I've talked about this in length before. Little Pals from the Marvel Comics Group. This is one of those comics that I saw sitting up on the wall of the Source Comics and Games, and I was like, much like the Millie the Model I was fawning over last couple podcasts, I never bought this. It could be because it was published from 72 to 73, and I wasn't buying Marvel Comics until 77. But it's a Marvel comic. If you can find them in mint shape, upwards of $150. This one was not mint. But I did pick up the number 1. It only had 5 issues. Number 5 has a Super Rabbit story for you Super Rabbit fans. And it just got it's got a duck character on the front, 20-cent cover price, fun-filled animal antics. Back is a Class A Racing, talking about the Ideal Toy Company Class A open track racing system. And this is where you don't need batteries or electricity because everything was puffed by air. And of course, as a kid, I wanted one instantly, but never did get one. So we'll crack it open. The first ad is 3 big drafting kits given to you when you train at home with NASD, NASD for a high-paying job in drafting. Take your pick of 2 exciting. Forget it. You can go read the ad. The first story, of course, Howie, I cannot read your last name. Doze?
Post.
Post?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a bad-looking T. He drew it, Monkey and the Bear. And apparently it has a Melvin Monkey going against a gentleman called Boneyard Bear. And he basically, Melvin Monkey, he talks like this. Now listen to them boys chopping. They always brighten up and oily. Out to hustle some worms. Ain't nature delightful? And of course, the birds are going chomp, chomp. And basically, what's he going to do? Well, what am I going to do? Monday, Tuesday. Here it is. Toys Day. Yes, of course. How silly me. Everything in his book. Jip, Boneyard Bear. Jip, Boneyard Bear. So he dresses up like a con man. He gets to Boneyard Bear's door. Good morning, my good man. And I'm reading it as it's written here in the word balloons. I have here the greatest bargain of the century. This here genuine 14-karat gold brick is yours for the measly sum of $50. And Fuzzy Bear starts laughing. What's so funny about that? And the bear gives the monkey a big kick. Well, that's the oldest trick in the world. And what's more, Melvin Monkey, I can see right through your disguise. You know, that fuzz brain is right. That phony gold brick trick is old. So 1 hour later, he knocks on the door. And Bernie answers. And the poor little girl has a sign. Dear sir, I've lost the use of my voice. Only a very expensive operation can bring my voice back. Will you help? Now, here's something that's very important because apparently kids in the 70s were stupid. On the very bottom of the page says, continued after next page. Why?
They did that all the time.
Because apparently kids were stupid growing up. Because apparently the next page had a cartoon, The Insult That Made a Man Out of Mac. Yes, let me prove I can make you a new man. Yes, of course, Charles Atlas with the classic, get away here, kid. I'd smash your face or you're so skinny you might dry up and blow away. We'll skip over that because we talked about it before. So Bear is like, "Why? Of course I'll help you. You poor dear child. How much do you need?" And the girl goes, "Well, $120 might be a start for the start, sir." And he gets kicked, and he goes, I guess I must have said something wrong. So it goes on and on and on. So finally, the monkey decides he can't even make an honest dime by jipping pointed no more. Just for that, I'm going straight. On my honor, I swear on this stack of comic books that I will never again do nothing crooked. Amen. And I'm going to scan that and put that on my Facebook page. Freaking great. So what happens? He's out there. What a great feeling. For the first time in my life, I'm an honest man. It is indeed. Oops, what's this? Yikes, a satchel full of dough? All of a sudden, the angel pops up. Now remember, Melvin, you promised to go straight. You must return the money. Yoinks, what a time to go straight. But since crime don't pay, I'm going to return the money. And as he's walking up to the banker and the banker goes, there it is, officer, the bag with my money. This nasty little fella stole it. Must have stolen it, but no buts for you, Mac. It's jail for you. So we see the poor monkey in jail, and he just painted a brick gold, and he's talking to a guy. Listen, pal, this is the bargain of the year. Genuine gold brick, special for you, only $5. And the guy's going, gee, for real? Now, what's real exciting on the next page, and Cory, let's go back to get your thinking cap going, because we're back in 1972. Stan Lee's soapbox. Above it, super special announcement. What do you think that announcement might be?
72?
Yes.
Was it Origin of Marvel Comics?
Nope. It actually has to do with who's taken over.
Oh! It was that Stan was going to be the publisher and Roy Thomas is now editor-in-chief.
Yep. I've been busting to tell you that rascally Roy Thomas, whose sensational scripts and awesome editorial assistants have helped spearhead Marvel gallop to greatness. And he goes on to talk about Gary Conway, Archie Goodwin, Steve Englehart, on and on and on. Next, fearless Frank Giacola.
Yep.
He's going to be our assistant art director. And 2 solid columns of this super special announcement. And that's it for now, gang. If you think we turned you on before, the best is yet to be. And then I get the Mighty Marvel checklist. I'm going to spend a little more time on this and less of the rest of the comic because I think it's kind of fun. Fantastic Four 126. This is where it all begins. And now, the return of the Mole Man. Meanwhile, Spider-Man 112, Spidey cops out. Our wall crawler turns his back on the world. Thor. He's fighting Ego Prime defeated. Odin's master plan revealed at last. Then, birth of a new mystery. Avengers 103, the Sentinels strike. How can the Avengers stop them when the Scarlet Witch is held hostage? Lest you thought about Hulk, the awesome entity called the Shaper of Worlds. And would you believe? Captain Axis? Captain America and the Falcon. 153, Cap versus Nick Fury. Sharon quits S.H.I.E.L.D. while the Falcon, well, wait and see. Daredevil 91, he's back from the dead. Mr. Fear, the only man who knows Daredevil's true identity. Submariner 53, battle to the finish with Sunfire. Excuse me a second, I'm getting verklempt. Iron Man number 50, can Prisonus Python give Shellhead a fight for his life? Conan the Barbarian 18, Demon, that walk like a man, a world in chaos. See why we call this one King of the Dead. There's Call the Conqueror. Marvel Team Up had Spidey, Morbius, and enter the X-Men. So this was number 4. And this was before New X-Men. So you talked about last episode, there was that Marvel Epic X-Men graphic or Epic collection that getting reprinted. That's reprinted in this with all the different X-Men stuff that ended with the end of the one series beginning at Giant Size. See what else we got here. Captain Marvel 22, as we said before, forget about it. This the hero wouldn't die, but that was before he met Megaton, the nuclear murderer. Amazing Adventures 14 had the Beast with the Attack of Quasimodo. Werewolf by Night number 1 came out. Tomb of Dracula 4. Marvel feature number 5, which contained Ant-Man coming face to face with Egghead. Marvel Premiere 4. Let's see, that was Doctor Strange versus the Spawn of Silguth. Creatures on the Loose, number 19. Gulliver Jones versus the Barbarian of Mars, Sergeant Fury 104. The hard-hitting Howlers take on a crime syndicate in wartime Italy. Lest you think I'm going on all day, the last comic they list was Red Wolf #3, War of the Wolf Brothers. I absolutely love reading these because just all the books that were out at the time, and wouldn't you love to go back in time and say, hey, pick up a few more of them Werewolf by Nights. Oh, and 5 issues from now, Iron Man 55, buy whatever you can find. The rest of the book, prizes for cash. You got all them cool ads where you could buy a super speed karate or a giant size karate practice dummy, be taller instantly. There's one-page strips, Cuckoo Cat, Jungle Fun. Here's a way you can add a muscle course for 3 inches. Buck Duck. Make sure you get it all correct that way. Let's see. We'll train you in spare time for an exciting outdoor career from the National School of Conservation. Another Cuckoo Cat and Tubby the Turtle Tail. They actually kind of do something weird because while they fight, the last panel is juxtaposed where the character's walking on the top of the panel, which unusual. Hey, time to sell grit. Or you can get a 1-cent special worth $5. You just have to send them $1 with 5, 10, whatever. Another Buck Duck story. A couple big ads full of just little tiny things like here's Clint's Books in Kansas City, Banana Stamp. You can fantastic new catalog from Flint, Chicago, Illinois. You can get tricks, emblems. Another Monkey and Bear story. You can train to be a draftsman. More continued. The final 2 ads, one of them is the Monogram Quality Hobby Kits where they have the snap tight. I don't know what they're kind of like deformed heavy machinery things. And I'm sure if you had them, you would have snapped them together. The last one, of course, for $12.95, you get 3 complete fishing outfits. 411 pieces for just $12.95. Plus $1 for postage and handling. So Marvel's attempt, I don't know what else was going. Maybe this is their attempt to break into just funny animals. This was after, were they doing their own distributing then? Did they
I can answer that question, Joe.
Oh, that would be awesome.
By telling you about Howie Post.
Okay.
Howie Post started drawing in comics back in the 40s, late 40s. And while he was at Marvel, he worked for the L.B. Cole studio doing superhero stuff, but he soon moved into funny animals. And when he got over to Atlas in the 50s, Goodman was selling everything. No matter if some sold, they'd do their own. So Monkey and Bear, The Monkey and the Bear was a series that Atlas published for about 6 months. He did other animal stories. And what Marvel did in the 70s, once they broke free of their contract with National Publications, got their own distribution through Candace, they just flooded the market. And a lot of this book here was a reprint of their 50s funny animal stuff, thinking, okay, we'll see if funny animals sell. If they sell, we're going to create new stuff, but they would test the market with reprints. After Atlas shut down their funny animals, Howie Post went over to Harvey, where he was a Casper artist. He did a lot of stuff for Casper, Spooky the Tough Little Ghost, the Ghostly Trio. He also did some work for their studio, the famous studios, including creating the character Honey Halfwitch, which was voiced by Sherry Lewis. And then when that faded away, he went over to DC, where he created and drew the book Anthro, the world's first boy. He also got a comic strip going, but he came back to Marvel in 1985 to draw Heathcliff and the Care Bears.
Oh, cool.
After the Starline collapsed, he was the editor on both Looney Tunes Magazine and Tiny Toons Magazine for DC. So Howie Post was around in comics for a long, long time.
Cool. You can find a lot of these issues. They tend to go anywhere from $10 to $499.99. That's a 9.8, which of number 5, which I believe is the highest and only graded Stan Goldberg cover.
Oh,
For a little trivia for you. So, yeah, I can tell you if I find it. I mean, this is kind of fun. Some of the jokes were actually funny, as opposed to a lot of times you read these like, I know how you felt when you get dad jokes. But anyways, so that's my pick down memory lane, little pals. Well, what do you got for us today, little pal?
my retro review is Twilight Zone #1, which was published by Gold Key in 1962. So Twilight Zone had been around for a few years, which was odd in that usually when Dell / Gold Key / Western Publishing would do a TV tie-in, they would do it during the first season because it was part of the promotion for the new series. And the fact that they waited until 62 for Twilight Zone was odd. Also, Twilight Zone, the longest running of the Dell / Gold Key / Western Publishing adaptations, because it lasted until 1980, long after the show had gone off the air. It is 3 stories. They don't really feel like Twilight Zone stories, even though they have a drawing of Rod Serling introducing each one. Instead, they feel very much like the Gold Key's horror / mystery books at the time. They already had a Boris Karloff comic. It is believed that all of the stories in this book were written by Paul S. Newman, who I believe he owns the world's record for the most comic book stories written. Of course, no credits were ever given on any Gold Key books. The art in this looks a lot like Dan Spiegel, because Dan Spiegel did a lot of the TV tie-in and serious books for Gold Key. The first story is called Perilous Journey, about skiers, one of whom falls into a hole and then meets a bunch of weird-looking children. And the children act in strange ways, driving him toward a shelter. And in the shelter is a little girl who becomes a beautiful woman who still has the reflection of a little girl. So the skier destroys the reflection so that she stays a beautiful woman. But then she starts aging, and the shelter starts collapsing in on him, and he wakes up, and it's all been a dream, which is how you know, no, that is not a Twilight Zone story. That's just lazy writing. The second story, let's see here, is called Do Not Touch Exhibit. And in it, a criminal breaks into a building as he's running from the police, and he sees a sign that says "Do not touch exhibit." He knocks it over. He goes into the exhibit. There's a blinding flash of light, and all of a sudden he's in a Union fort that is about to be attacked by the Confederates. And he doesn't know how he got there, and he's very confused, and they lock him up in the prison. But as they're being attacked, he escapes, puts on a Union uniform. Guess what? He gets knocked out. We then go to the police, who come in to see that, oh, he didn't escape. He's still here. Look, there's a picture of him at Custer's last stand.
Dun, dun, dun.
Again, kind of a twist ending, but again, it doesn't really feel like a Twilight Zone story. The last one is called Voyage to Nowhere. And it is about a couple of sailors who are in a storm. They see a woman in a small craft who's dressed in an elaborate gown from the Victorian era, and they try to save her, but she says, no, I must get to town. I'm getting married. And then after she vanishes, a huge wave comes and helps them get to shore where they're safe. So they go into the local pub, and on the wall is a painting of the woman, and they say, oh, she died 100 years ago. And the rumor is that, when people see her, if they let her go on her journey, she'll cause a wave to send you to safety. But if you get in the boat with her or you try to save her, you're never heard from again. So, of course, one of the sailors who's fallen madly in love with her goes out. He gets in the boat with her. Of course, he is then never seen again. That feels more like a ghost story. And this could have been a story that had been drawn for the Boris Karloff ghost horror comic, and instead they took out Boris Karloff's face, put in Rod Serling's face, slap it in this issue. It's fairly mediocre. It doesn't really feel like the Twilight Zone. It feels more like just an average Gold Key horror comic. After the code came and you couldn't really have horror in your horror comics anymore. But Twilight Zone must have been a good enough license that the book lasted for 90 issues and almost 30 years, almost 20 years, which is a hell of a good run.
The last issue was 92 and 82, 1982. I mention it because I've talked about this issue before. That's why, you were doing the Voyage to Nowhere, and I'm like, that sounds familiar. And I went and looked it up. I actually had this in my collection. It's one of the books I sold when I was selling on eBay. And they actually did reprints from Twilight Zone #1. But now, a third chance for Cory to redeem himself. Does the Strode know what influential comic book artist who's still doing stuff today debuted in the Twilight Zone series?
I want to say Frank Miller.
You got it. Issue number 84.
That's what I thought.
Work. Issue number 85 is his second work. The first one, I was looking up prices. They're slabbed 4.5, $250. There's a couple signed ones on the eBay. The 84, there's a couple raw ones out there for as low as $30. So if you're digging through those cheese bins, that's the place to go to look for them. If you see either 80 or 85, you got some gold there.
And I thought it was weird that he broke in with Gold Key because they were on the West Coast. A lot of comic artists in the 70s broke in at Carlton because they were in Connecticut, which was really close to New York.
I will have to research to see if Frank's ever covered. She must have covered that somewhere in an interview, but I just thought that was kind of interesting. I was just kind of browsing through, and then when you started talking about the Voyage, I'm like, I read that book somewhere.
Well, and they did do a reprint of Twilight Zone stories. Those, what were they? Let me pull that up.
Excuse him while he whips this out.
There you go. They did giveaways that reprinted early Twilight Zone comics that were giveaways at certain stores. So it may have been reprinted in one of those as well. But also Gold Key did a lot of reprints in their books.
And there was Whitman. It could have been in a 3-pack. You never know. You just don't know.
Well, Joe, you talk about places people can go for comic conventions. Do you have a list?
There are people doing pop-up sales. There's actually one coming this weekend, which, again, by the time you've listened to this podcast, don't do you no good. And it kills me because I work weekends, so I don't get to see a lot of these shows. Poor Joel. But there are stuff coming up that I will be able to go see. I mentioned before TF Con. Excuse me a second. Oh, as you're listening to this, it happens tomorrow in Chicago. TFCon.com, Voices of Optimus Prime, RC, Megatron. There's going to be tons of people there, tons of things. I wish I could go. Oh, Dangerous Dan Moore, where are you? We need to transform and roll out. I will probably wait till October 30th because Halloween Bash number 6 will be held courtesy of the Minnesota Toy Posse. This will be out at the Bloomington Event Center, which is 1114 American Boulevard in Bloomington. Free admission, 9 a.m. to 3. Tons of toys. Every so often, guys with comics. So hopefully my guy from Fargo brings your sign books down. Come on. I actually was looking on the eBays because they have signed copies of those Twilight Zones that we were talking about. And if you don't mind going for cheap copies, you can get them for pretty good prices, at least in my opinion. If you're into a bigger con, and again, in the next couple of weeks, I will get into it, talk about some of the guests there, but this is where you'll see people like Nick Foley and other pro wrestlers and other guests. Twin Cities Con 2022. It's a celebration of comics, toys, TV, film, art, cosplay, games, and all things nerdy. November 11th through the 13th at the Minneapolis Convention Center in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And of course, if you go to Twin Cities Con, check their website. A lot of these guests have signing fees. So if you want to get in line, get a photo, get signed, you buy it all ahead of time. If you just want to go buy some regular comics, coming up November 19th, the Minnesota Comic Exchange is doing their freebie show at the Valley Creek Mall over in 9 a.m.
Isn't that Woodbury?
Is it what?
Woodbury?
Woodbury, thank you. Why I'm looking at their thing and it's not there, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, I've been there. For more information, you can go to, it's on Facebook as well, Minnesota Comic Exchange, WordPress.com/Minnesota Comic Exchange. Just check for this show November 19th. I had a blast last time I was there. Tables are sold out, but 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Again, I work, but I'm going to try to get there. Actually, because it's a mall, it's open when the mall's open, so you can just walk in. Because I got there, stuff was going on, crazy. And we have yet to talk to Greg Ketter, but we'll find out more about MiniCon, April 7th through the 9th in 2023. Those are the shows I know about. If you've got a show or an appearance coming up, especially in the Twin Cities area, you can do it worldwide. I don't care. I mean, we've got a lot of news that was coming out of we'll talk about that when we get to Freaking and Geeky. When New York Comic Con was over the weekend, a lot of news coming out of them. But that's it for now.
And now we get to my favorite part of the show. No, not where I break open my peanut butter pretzels and squeeze in a bunch of easy cheese so that it will give me the most unhealthy snack in the history of mankind.
Easy cheese.
No, it's Freaking and Geeking. Joe, what are you freaking on?
I had an MRI today. I've never had an MRI.
For what, a half hour?
About 40 minutes.
Oh.
And the worst part about it, of course, was just getting the IV, because I do get tired of being pricked. But it was interesting enough. I know they're worried because the big thing with MRIs, it's extremely claustrophobic if you are claustrophobic. Have you ever had an MRI, Cory?
I have. It did not bother me. However, I do have a hanging at the home story.
Oh.
One of our clients had sort of fallen onto the floor and was non-responsive. So we took her to the ER. They did all these tests, and they said, we're going to have to take her and give her an MRI. So we take off all the metal, and she's still out of it. And this is like 3 a.m. So they get her on the gurney, they take her off. And, an MRI takes about an hour, anywhere from a half hour to an hour. 10 minutes later, they bring her back. And the nurse just wants nothing to do with her. And the client, she'd woken up and she was yelling and not making any sense. And she brings her in the room, and I go to help her move her over. It's like, no, I'll do it. And he moves her over onto the bed and storms off. And a doctor comes in later and told me that she had woke up during the MRI and started pounding on the walls and yelling that they'd locked her in a prison. And the whole time she's in the room, she's like, These ceilings are too short. These ceilings are too short. I don't know why they did that. And I'm trying to understand what the hell's going on until the doctor told me. So hopefully you were not asleep when they put you in the MRI tube.
I could have gone to sleep. That, you put me on my back, rub my tummy. I'm like an alligator. I'm ready to go to sleep. It was okay. I mean, I'd never had it done before. So to me, anytime I do a medical procedure I've never done before, it's like, what a grand adventure, which actually was kind of, I think, relieving to the technicians that were working, because you could see them kind of relax when I said, yeah, I'm kind of, because you say, have you been claustrophobic? I said, I'm not really sure. I know before my hip surgery, when I went to the chiropractor, they strapped me down on this stretching machine, which you're pretty much in place, and then it just stretches you and lets you relax. And I couldn't do the full half hour. I hit the panic button like at the 20-minute mark because it was just too much. So I suppose being restrained. The other thing that helped was that I wasn't, because they're doing it, because remember, I went to do the MRI to find out what this lump is that's growing down below. And they were taking pictures of it. So they stuck me, my head was actually out of the one end of the machine.
Oh.
So it was kind of like, Kilroy was here, but I could see the ceiling, and I really wasn't in the machine. When they put me through the machine, I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to keep my eyes closed this whole time. But once I found out I was on the end, it wasn't as bad. I had headphones on. I had them put on George Winston music, which is kind of relaxing. Although when that machine cranks up and George dials down, it was.
I remember when I was in it, they asked me music, and you got the Beatles, and they put the headphones on me. And once the machine started, I couldn't hear the Beatles at all.
Yeah,
not at all.
They did turn it up, and I almost asked them to turn it down, but then I just let it be. So once they found out, I was more into it because I've never done it before. It was cool. The first round they did, and I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm moving all over the place. But what I had learned when I did chiro on my hips is how to strengthen your core. So I kind of locked my core in the muscles, and then I just breathed high in the chest, which is opposite, because when you're normal breathing, you want to kind of get the whole lung, especially when you're trying to talk or sing.
Yes.
So it was kind of like I just had to do the opposite. They pulled me out after 20 minutes, stuck the dye in me, did another round, and he said I did really well. I got good images. Tomorrow, I go talk to someone who will interpret all these images they have. The ultrasound, I did a test to see if it was testicular cancer. And I imagine I'll probably be felt up again. And now they got the MRI. So next week I'll be letting you know, is Cory going to be looking for a guest host again? Or is it just, I've never done it. Is it a day surgery? I have had talked with some friends of mine who have had it done. So they're kind of like, it's no big deal. It is. Anyways, so to be continued. Thank you for indulging. The only other thing freaking me on my health, my numbers are out of whack again. I don't know if everything's tied. My blood sugars have gone up a little, so I got to tamp them down. I have a reading on my liver that's out of whack, where it should be 55. It's like 115, which alarmed my rheumatologist. So I got to go give more blood. So on top of that, let's say I gave blood on Tuesday. I had an IV today. I had to go back and give more blood. I got to do it again next week. So hopefully that's just an aberration, and, just something with my meds that can be adjusted and changed. So just, folks, keep on top of this shit. I have one person I know was like, yeah, I had a lump on my testicle. I didn't do anything about it. What happened? Well, eventually we got the size of a grapefruit. Grapefruit? Oh. Other than that, as I said before, I don't have a box day yet. I haven't had a box day this month. It's been like at least 5 weeks. I know I've gotten a thing saying, we're sorry, we haven't sent your box day. Matter of fact, I was just looking on my email to see, because sometimes we're sending you your box. And then it shows up like on Friday or Saturday. And let me see. I'm just kind of looking through my emails. Nope. Still no box day. So, and again, I'm just glad I went out and bought the previews. I was actually going to say, Cory, do you use your digital previews that's inside every preview?
I do not.
Because maybe if you get your previews and I haven't gotten a physical copy yet, maybe I could just use that. Because I still want to get those episodes early in the month so you people have a chance to listen to it, enjoy our witticisms and criticisms and other isms, and maybe go to your friendly neighborhood retailer comic shop and say, hey, them idiots again said I should check this out. Can I order ones from you? Listen to me do my little pals. I mean, you knows what's good for you. You listen up. Yeah. So anyways, we'll talk off podcasts on that. So maybe that could be a workaround for the future if, I'm stuck and I can't find the previews. Because, I've been doing it. Their online one is good rather than just going to everybody else and trying, okay, what's coming out? Please tell me. I got money. Cory, what you freaking on?
I had a horrible allergy attack last week. Now, normally I would not put that in a freaking, except for the fact that we also did previews last week. I've spent so far 6 hours cutting my sniffles out of our 2.5 hour episode, and I have about an hour left to go. So if you're wondering why last week's episode came out on Friday instead of Wednesday, it's because I had to cut out all of the from every time I breathed, it seemed like, because it's like, oh God, I am so sick of me. Comic-wise, the only thing I am freaking about is, like with Joe, except it's a lot of my stuff isn't coming out because Marvel is delaying their omnibuses, but they're not announcing they're delayed. Because I look and it's like, I would have thought that omnibus would be out already. Oh, it was supposed to come out in July. Still not out yet. Oh, this was supposed to come out in August. Still not out yet. Marvel doesn't announce their delays for omnibuses like they do all their other stuff. It's kind of, okay, it's going to be late. Will it show up in August? Will it show up in October? Will it show up next year? We don't know. We have no idea. So enjoy. And I imagine that's why you don't see a lot of omnibuses in shops that aren't pre-ordered, because you can't budget for it if it's not coming out in the month that it's supposed to. And I don't think we need to go into budgeting and stuff again. But people think, oh, well, if you order it, it doesn't matter. You don't have to pay till it shows up. Yeah, but if it doesn't show up the month you've budgeted for it to come out, that profit's not going to be there that month either. So, yes, you're not spending money, but you're also not bringing in any money. So it's like opening your doors for your business. I don't have any deliveries. Yay, I didn't spend any money today, but you didn't have any sales. Well, I guess the bills are going to be delayed too, right? No, they aren't. Aww. And that's really all I am freaking on. Joe, what are you geeking on?
Well, we've already talked pretty much what I'm really geeking on. Like I said, the Fantastic Four Full Circle, a little underwhelmed, but it's growing on me. Absolutely loving reading the new, can't quite back arm that, the New Mutants Omnibus. And, I'm getting to the point where I don't care if my omnibus is survive in minty mint shape, because it's just a blast reading it. And it's amazing because, as I've mentioned before, I was on New Mutants in the very beginning, and I remember bits and pieces and stuff, but I don't remember a lot of this stuff. So I may, and you know what the other thing is I don't really care about other iterations of the New Mutants. I just want, it's like I want my golden age of reading, again, 77, probably till, I'll say maybe 84 when I started to sell comics with Gruber. And again, I don't regret it, but that's when I stopped looking at my comic books as a collection, something to keep and enjoy and fill out. And then it just became more of a commodity. Like, I can sell this now for money. And I do like going back into the Silver Age. Hence, I got all the essentials. I'll be getting epics. I'll probably getting online. I don't, DC not as much, because they're I talked about it way back when I was reading the Phantom Trainer Showcase. It's like the same story in every issue. And granted, when they're a month, 2 months apart, maybe as a kid, I'd be like, oh, yeah, that's kind of cool. But the rest of it was like, oh, and I know they get better because towards the end, when you get into the 70s, they actually made it more of a horror type story or Twilight Zone-ish. So that's kind of cool. As you heard earlier, I've been playing The Simpsons Tapped Out because they have just uploaded this year's Simpsons Treehouse of Horror, which means the episode's got to be real soon. And of course, everything gets on a 4-hour task, in order to get the prizes and whatever they're going to have. But what I love doing is, I mean, I've been playing this for a while, and I must have about 300 characters. So usually I just hit, I think a DMV, not DMV, it's a job button where you hit. Everybody goes on 12-hour tasks, so I don't have to worry about it. But during the Halloween one, I love to just go and give everybody an individual task, which itself takes me about 40 minutes because I want everybody either to be on screen doing an action, not hiding in a building, and I want them like in a costume. So like, you got Barney running around in his diaper. You got Hans, who, don't make me run when I'm full of chocolate. He runs around in his underwear full of chocolate. The Kirkmans, Luann has her sexy squirrel outfit. I can have the dad running around chasing his acorn. And of course, the other guys are on tasks. I actually have a little thing where it allows me to put the kids in uniform. Willie is in his barbarian stage. I have him doing the 24-hour generate electricity. And of course, when I hit it, he goes, screw you. It's a lot of fun. And I've got so many donuts now. I've got so much money packed up in it. But the new Simpsons game, the way I have it set up, it's real generous with giving you donuts. I can buy them. I usually do because then you get another character. And I can buy some of the premium characters if I want. I don't go totally crazy, but I do go, if they do another superhero event, that's probably when I'll go crazy and just, okay, one of these days I'll buy $50 worth of donuts because then I'll get that exclusive $50 building. I got to have $50 because, I'm not rich by any means, which is why I'm announcing my return to eBay. Nice segue, huh? I don't know how I'm going to talk about eBay. I like the segment we're doing now with the retro comics more so than the eBay. It's hard to talk about eBay because, like, I was going to talk about this book I picked up, White Widow, which is a real interesting book. There's only been 6 issues so far. They come with lenticular cover, wraparound covers, regular covers. A young girl is, hang on a second. I'm not going to try to paraphrase this. Let me just open one. Excuse me while I whip this out.
Woo!
And what's neat is as you buy these, because these don't come out monthly, they're from the Absolute Comic Group. And there's 5 issues, 6 obviously in my hand, and then a tie-in, I Make Boys Cry, which I think I talked about when number 1 came out. But they give you a story so far, it breaks it down into issues. And then you go to the last page. Then you go to the last page and they give you all the different covers. So you can go to your retailer and say, I'd like this cover. Next time they solicit one, I'll take a look to see about the prices because they're showing the main cover, the wraparound metallic ink cover, the animated lenticular cover. On eBay, they can go for some funny money, and I've seen some variants go for silly money. But issue number 1, we meet Gabrielle Garcia, a college student at NYU who's studying to get her degree in computer science. While practicing volleyball, she passes out with a mysterious nosebleed and is rushed to the hospital. Her parents seem overly concerned, but she brushes it off. A few days later, her father shows up in her dorm room, injects her with a strange liquid, and falls on the floor. He'd been shot and was dying, but not before handing Gabrielle a memory stick he claimed would explain everything. Before she could call an ambulance, her body was suddenly covered in a strange substance that formed a white armor emblazed with a spider symbol on her chest. She was then attacked by agents who had been pursuing her father. In the ensuing battle, she killed 3 of them before she escaped. So this ain't no code-approved book, fanboy, but it sounds interesting. The art looks really good, just in the one issue that I got and I looked through. And I think this, if I can get these, they're not, like I said, I can get their probably regular issues cheap. I'll look around next time I go wandering through comic stores, see what I can find. But anyways, I put them on eBay and they sold. So it's hard for me to do that. And of course, what I've been doing on eBay is I don't have the store set up yet. Right now, say flip here, let me see. I've got about 39 books up. And most of these are things, some of them are things that have been up before. Others, like this White Widow, I've never had before on the eBay. So if you're like, oh, you got the same old shit. Well, guess what? I got a whole bunch of different shit. The best way to do it is, let me try to find my list. Find me on eBay by looking for my name, Crazy, Krayz, ebay.com/USR/crazy. And again, a lot of things make a deal. As my listener, I will toss in one of the things that's not on the eBay right now. So if you want to check some really fun stuff out. So far to sell, and this is probably what I'll probably talk more about. I've sold the White Widow I mentioned, number 6. It was a wraparound lenticular cover. And then I sold my last 2 copies of the IDW Larry Hama G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, just in time for it to end. Because some of those later issues, I don't think people were buying, or if they did, they didn't buy the right variants. And some guy made me an offer, and I said, hey, I got this other one for whatever. Even the White Widow, I just made an offer for, because I want to buy me some Frank Miller signed books and some other $50 knick-knack paddywhacks. I mentioned New York Comic Con. I am geeking supreme out of the trailer for Picard. If you haven't seen it, check it out. If you have, good. If you don't want a spoiler, plug yourself out for 10 seconds. The Return of Lore, Moriarty. Oh my gosh, they're just giving you little snippets of stuff designed to make your nose bleed. So naturally, after watching that, I went and watched Star Trek. What's the name of that? Lower Deck.
Oh,
because that's new episodes dropping Thursday. They did drop a trailer for Discovery, but as usual, we have no reference to what's going on because they're so far in the future. There's rumor that there may be a current time, set in air quotes, with Admiral Janeway on it. So somebody point blank asked Kate Mulgrew, are we ever going to see you in a current time? And I forget the showrunner. He kind of, next question, please. Next question, please. So everybody was like, ooh, so obviously we'll see what happens. And again, the Discovery trailer's out there. We don't know what's going on. It looks good. I've loved Discovery. And of course, when I'm done here, I got the last 2 episodes of She-Hulk to watch. We've been talking about nitpicking and, it's so woke, this, so that. All I can say is all the women I know that have watched this show love it. So it's more geared towards women. I'm loving it because I'm a comic geek. My wife enjoys it. I don't think she would seek it out without me because there's still it's a superhero. Yeah, but it's kind of funny. So I've heard good things about Werewolf by Night, and that'll be the next one I'm on. I didn't watch Star Wars Andor today. I guess it's because I spent an hour in a tube going. Cory, what are you geeking on?
Let's see. The first thing I am geeking on, Joe, you know that I am from Central Illinois. And the town that I went to.
Illinois. I couldn't understand your accent.
When there was a town that I used to go to called Galesburg, Illinois. That was the closest town that had movie theaters and things to do and everything. What I did not know, in 1981, there was a movie released called Strange Behavior. It was a slasher movie. It was filmed in New Zealand. But it was set in Galesburg, Illinois. So I have to watch it. And I looked, and it's not on any streaming service. It's not on this. It's not on this. Oh, where's the DVD? Oh, the DVD's out of print, and it's going for $50-$60 because horror fans are like comic fans. And oh wait, there it is. It's on the Criterion channel in their 80s horror section. Woohoo!
You're kidding me.
No.
Didn't think it was that good.
Let's see what it says. It was one of the video nasties, which means that when it was put out on video in the 80s in England, they said, nope, it is too violent for children, therefore it cannot be sold. It was a video nasty.
Call your mom before you watch it.
Let's see. It failed to attract a large enough audience to make a second installment. It is a homage to the pulp horror films of the 50s. The film is considered a seminal work of New Zealand cinema, being the first horror film produced in the country and has attracted a large cult following.
Are you into the Halloween movies?
Yes, and tomorrow we get Halloween Ends.
I was going to say, they can't officially talk about it because there's an embargo, but all the reviewers are, well, let's just say they were talking about how Top Gun Maverick was a great movie. If you wink, wink, get what they were talking about.
Yeah.
So very, very, I may even go see that one. I'll go see it with Chris because I know she likes those movies.
Well, not only that, Joe, I was teenager in the late 70s, early 80s. I was in junior high when Halloween came out. Corey Strode rhymes with Laurie Strode, and I got a lot of crap for it. However, I got revenge on everyone in the world by making sure my son was named Michael. And my wife did not know because she went, well, here are a bunch of names. I went, she flat out said I couldn't name him Bruce Wayne.
Oh, well, yeah, you go ridiculous and work your way to. I didn't see it.
So then she had the names, and it's like, I like the name Michael. And of course, in the second Halloween movie, we find out that Michael Myers is the brother of Laurie Strode. Michael's fine.
Are you saying you got him a William Shatner mask for Christmas?
Not yet. Not yet. Now, the other thing for me is I don't need to go to a theater because it will be premiering on Peacock the same day it starts in theaters.
Oh, I think I'd rather see it in the theater. I think it'd be more fun.
Comic-wise, I have been still reading the Sabrina book. And I've got up to the manga Sabrina. And they've got two or three issues. I wish I would have bought this when it came out because it is really fun. Tanya Del Rio wrote and drew them. They were in the early 2000s, and it lasted a few years. But boy, these are really fun, and I'm kind of surprised that they haven't brought it back now that manga is selling so well. But who knows what's going on with Archie? They start a new series that's really hot and then just forget about it because the writer says, I'm too busy making a TV show. And then the very last thing I am geeking on, I got the Alex Toth book. Let me get the name of it here. Genius Isolated, which is about Alex Toth's art and career. And it is a big, thick, honking book that covers his career in animation and in comics. And our pal Paul Fricke worships at the altar of Alex Toth the way I worship at the altar of Jack Kirby. And I can see why. He is an artist. His stuff is utterly fantastic. I know his stuff, but I don't know much about him. And this book really digs into his style, his different his work across all these different fields, but it does not shy away from the fact that Alex Toth was a guy who, let's just say that he rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And I'm going to read a story about Alex Toth from Mark Evanier. But the story was that he went to a doctor. As he was at the doctor, of course, is asking, what do you do for a living? And he says, well, I work in animation and I also write comic books. And the doctor said, oh, I had a comic book artist here a little while ago. Maybe you know him. And the guy said, he's older guy, always argued with me about everything. Argues about this, argues about that, et cetera, et cetera. And Evan says, was his name Alex Toth? And the doctor says, why, yes, it was. He recently came up on a number of different comic creators' Facebook pages. And one of the things that really sort of stuck with me was that Howard Chaykin says, yeah, I knew him for 30 years and I probably should have stopped being friends with him about 5 years before because I would have liked him much more. And there are some people, they're utter geniuses, but they're also complete pains in the ass. And it sounds like Toth was one of them. But as I read this book, I'll be bringing more of the stuff from the book here so that we could talk more about these artists that, like Howie Post. Here's a guy who was in comics for 35, 40 years. Most people don't know him, but if you know your comics history, like, you picked up a reprint from the 70s that reprints his stuff from the 50s. And then, and here was the rest of what he did. I always find that stuff fascinating, and I hope people who listen to the podcast do as well, because I'm not going to stop doing it. Believe it or not, kids, you've listened to us blather on about comic books for over 2 hours.
Thank you.
We have to figure out a way to get this podcast down to 90 minutes, or I'm just going to lose my mind.
We're finding so much more to talk about.
And as we say every week, the comic we like the least, we still like better than the comic that you like the most. Joe?
Cory, I'm not going to give you a dad joke this week.
Oh, thank God.
I am going to tell you, though, here are some difficult to strip to hits. Songs such as Cats in the Cradle by Harry Chaplin. Nights in White Satin by the Moody Blues. Can you imagine trying to strip to the Gambler by Kenny Rogers? How about Sailing by Christopher Cross?
Tom Sawyer by Rush.
I could see you doing that, though. Send in the Clowns by Judy Collins. This Land Is Your Land by Woody Guthrie. And, of course, Old Man by Neil Young. Well, that one I could see doing. Cory, tell you what. Why don't you tie a yellow ribbon around the old oak tree and you and I will shake it till we break it.
I think we'd get sued.
Yeah, we would. Hit my music.